Although Switzerland is a relatively small country in size, it plays a major role in the world of finance. The city of Zurich is the acknowledged commercial capital of the country, and a large number of its workforce are employees of banks and insurance companies. There have been settlements in this region since the Stone Age, and a community gradually established itself at the point where the river Limmat flows out of the lake. The Romans built a customs station here in 15 BC, and the town's commercial importance developed steadily over the years. In the 14th century, the tradesmen's guilds took over political power, with the canton joining the Swiss Confederation in 1351. But it was during the 19th century that Zurich developed into the important economic centre it is today. With the rapid increase in population, a good public transport system became essential, engendering a network of tram routes all over the city. Early streetcars were horse-drawn, but these were relatively slow and were soon superseded by electric models. Initially, a variety of independent companies operated along these lucrative routes, but they were all gradually absorbed by the Städtische Straßenbahn Zurich, the forerunner of today's VBZ. Today, the ubiquitous blue trams run frequent and efficient services to every part of the city, and are used by all sections of the public, from bank presidents to the most junior clerk. When the railways came to Switzerland, it was natural for this progressive city to be at the forefront of the new development, with the very first all-Swiss line opening in August 1847 from Zurich to Baden. Other routes followed in rapid succession, and the connection to Italy via the Gotthard Line was established at the end of the 19th century. The station complex has expanded greatly over the decades and now handles over 1,500 trains daily. This is a terminus, so while push-pull sets have no trouble arriving and departing from the platforms, loco-haul services must uncouple and receive a new unit before continuing on their way, with the original engine freed for other duties. Below the station lies an extensive shopping area with arcades and restaurants. This state-of-the-art construction was opened in 1990, with 2 floors below the main platforms. On the lowest level, the trains of the Zurich S-Bahn operate frequent commuter services to towns and villages throughout the canton. S-Bahn is the abbreviation of Schnellbahn, or fast trains. We'll be making a rather longer journey, joining the Eurocity Gottardo service, which runs daily between Zurich and Milan. Our train is one of the 5 RABE EC units, purchased in the 1960s from SIG and MFO, which formerly ran all over Europe on the TEE service. Until 1988, they sported a red and cream livery, but are now resplendent in grey and white, which has led to their nickname, Grey Mice. Our route will take us past the lakes of Zurich, Zug and Lucerne before traversing the Alpine Massif through the very heart of the country. Numbers 1051 to 1054 were originally built as 5-car units, being increased to 6 when the last set was delivered in 1967. All sets are based at Zurich. However, their days in service are numbered, with the regular hauls to Italy and Germany having ceased in the autumn of 1994. The route we are taking out of Zurich is the line to Chur and eastern Switzerland, which runs along the southwestern shore of the lake. This stretch of track was opened in September 1875 by the Nordostbahn, Switzerland's oldest railway company, which during the second half of the 19th century built a network of lines radiating from Zurich and covering the northern part of the country. Its energetic president, Alfred Escher, left the NOB in 1871 to head the board of the newly formed Gotthard Railway Company. At Thalwil, there's a major junction, and our line passes over a modern flyover toward Zug, following the tracks opened by the Nordostbahn at the end of the 19th century to connect with the Gotthard Railway. Our way continues beside the lake for another few kilometers, but at a higher level than the tracks to Chur. The original connection between Zurich and Zug was opened as early as 1864, not via Thalwil, but running to the west of the Uetliberg Ridge through the Knonauer Amt region. For the first 30 years it was operated by the Zurich Zug and Lucerne Railway Company, being taken over by the Nordostbahn in 1892. Today it's part of the SBB's extensive S-Bahn network. At Hogen, our train must reduce speed, for we're now entering a single-track section through the Zimmerberg Tunnel, which will take us almost 2,000 meters through the Hogenberg Ridge. We emerge near Sielbrug, where we pass the terminus of the SZU tracks. This line has operated since 1892, bringing passengers from Zurich down the scenic valley of the River Siel. Immediately after Sielbrug, we enter the Albisse Tunnel, which runs for 3,359 meters under the rolling hills of the region, taking us into the open plain to the north of Lake Zug. The first station was built here in the middle of the 19th century, although the town of Zug was founded by the Counts of Kieberg some 600 years previously. It's the capital of Switzerland's smallest full canton, and the Landsgemeinde Square and picturesque Old Quarter are the perfect place for a leisurely stroll. After Zug, we run along the eastern shore of the lake towards Arth-Goldau, where we'll join the tracks from Lucerne. We're now running over Gotthard metals for the first time. The line between Zug and Arth-Goldau was opened by the Gotthard Bahn in 1897 to make the connection between Zurich and the main tracks from Lucerne to Chiasso. The route along the hillside is narrow, and unlike the remainder of the Gotthard route, was never converted to double track. The main station at Arth-Goldau dates from 1897, when the connection was made to Zug, replacing the smaller complex built for the opening of the Gotthard Line some 15 years previously. A junction was formed in 1890 with the arrival of the Southbound track from Vasin on Lakes Zürich. However, these companies were all predated by the Bahn, which opened in the summer of 1875 to take tourists to the summit of the nearby mountain. Building on the standard gauge line from Arth began in 1873, but it was 2 years before the 13 kilometers of track reached the summit. Like the Wittnau-Rigi Railway, which runs from Lake Lucerne and was opened in 1871, it was the brainchild of Niklaus Riggenbach, whose ingenious ladder rack and pinion system made the whole scheme possible. The gradients on this side of the mountain are 1 in 5, slightly gentler than the 1 in 4 of the Wittnau route. As early as the 17th century, the slopes of the Rigi, rising almost 1,800 meters above sea level, has attracted visitors. The first guest house was built on the Rigi Kulm in 1816, with travellers ascending on foot or by horse before the arrival of the railway half a century later. Across the valley from the Rigi, the Rossberg mountain still bears the scars caused by a huge landslide which, on the 2nd of September 1806, sent thousands of tons of stone crashing down into the valley below. Today, the boulders which litter the valley floor form a fascinating setting for an unusual animal sanctuary, where a variety of Swiss and European animals are able to wander in comparative freedom. Their lack of fear is the result of long years of happy coexistence with friendly visitors and wardens. Only those animals who might prove dangerous, such as the wolves, are separated, and even the wild pigs are allowed their freedom when they're not jealously guarding their young. The deer and sheep prove a great attraction to the public, who are encouraged to feed the animals with special tidbits. The curly-horned mouflons, wild European rams, once roamed freely across the Alps. The young ibex enjoy the view from their crag, but the impressive horns of the adult males mean that the herd must remain within a special enclosure. The landslide created two small natural lakes, which teem with a wide variety of bird life. Visiting migrants take advantage of the park's facilities to breed in safety. The park's tranquil setting is in fact only meters away from the busy tracks of Arth-Goldau station, where we rejoin our train for the run through Canton Schwyz, one of the three regions which founded the Swiss Confederation. This section of track was opened in 1882, with the line doubled only 25 years later. The way runs gently downhill from here past the Lakes Zürich towards the much greater waters of Lake Lucerne. After Steinen, the line passes through a narrow cleft in the Platten Ridge, cut by the railway builders to allow the track a through passage. The rock face provides a challenge for climbers at weekends. The skyline is dominated by the twin peaks of the Mieten, which rise to a height of over 1,800 meters above sea level and form a striking backdrop to the lovely old town of Schwyz, the capital of the canton, which gives Switzerland its name and flag. From early days, the town provided soldiers to defend the youthful nation, and later became an important center for the recruitment of Swiss mercenaries whose fighting skills were in demand all over Europe. Today they retain a more peaceful role, guarding the Vatican City in Rome. The town still retains its military connections, for the famous Swiss Army knives have been manufactured here for over a century. The knives, originally made for Swiss soldiers and officers, have long since been adopted by other armies, as well as providing a popular souvenir for visitors from all over the world. The term Swiss Army knife was first coined by the US forces, and the American connection still continues, with NASA issuing them as part of the equipment for space shuttle missions. A variety of attachments is available, from the simplest knife and scissor set to the top-of-the-range Swiss Champ, which has over 64 separate parts. The trademark, Victorinox, derives from the combination of Victoria, the name of the founder's wife, and inox, the stainless metal alloy used for making the sharp blades. In order to differentiate the knives from inferior foreign imitations, which are now being manufactured, the largest blade is stamped with the Victorinox name. Modern machinery is widely used in all stages of the manufacturing process, complemented by the practiced eyes of a large and dedicated workforce. The company is the biggest employer in the region, now run by the fourth generation of the Elsener family, who ensure that the high standards laid down in the early days are still maintained. Hand checking and polishing ensures that every Swiss champ which leaves the factory will give superb service wherever in the world it is used. These top-quality products represent Swiss craftsmanship at its best, with all employees taking great pride in their contribution. The TEE stock is in splendid condition, having recently won the sought-after Brunel Award for the best restoration of a train set. The front car sports what appears to be a red nose, but which is actually a colourful guard for the special coupling which enables it to be worked as a multiple set. After Brunnen, the line runs along the eastern shore of Lake Lucerne. Here the railway builders were faced with the challenge of driving a track through the steep cliffs which border the water. A series of bores were excavated, offering passengers glimpses of the lake, which must have been a welcome relief from the smoky tunnels in the days before electrification. When this section of the line was doubled in the 1940s, the second track had to be driven even further into the mountain, and this was achieved by means of 3 long tunnels, the shortest of which is more than 1,300 meters. Apart from the passage through Sisikon, the 2 lines are separated for most of this section. Southbound trains are normally directed through the inner tunnels, while those running north take the original scenic route alongside the lake. Our train emerges from the last tunnel to run along the lake edge towards Flüelen, whose position at the southern tip of Lake Lucerne made it an important port on the old Gotthard route. Before the arrival of the railway, passengers travelled here from Lucerne by boat before transferring onto horseback for the overland journey. During the Middle Ages, the boatmen here organised themselves into guilds to help control the lucrative Gotthard traffic passing from Lucerne to Flüelen. While we're making our journey along the Gotthard Line by rail, it is still possible to reach Flüelen on one of 5 magnificent paddle steamers which run from Lucerne. The first steamship on the lake, Stad Lucerne, made her maiden voyage in 1837. Today's Stad Lucerne, the 3rd vessel to bear that name, came into service in 1928, the last paddle steamer to be commissioned in Switzerland. The oldest surviving steamboat in Switzerland is the DS Rigi, dating from 1847. She was built by a British company and was in active service on Lake Lucerne for over a century. Originally, she burned wood, changing to coal in 1862, though she was never modified to oil firing, as was the majority of the fleet. Today, she's on permanent exhibition in the garden of the Swiss Transport Museum. The oldest working paddle steamer in the country, Dampfschiff Juri, has been in service since 1901. She underwent a major restoration in the early 1990s and is now looking forward to delighting visitors well into the 21st century. The steamers call at various jetties around the lake, enabling walkers to take advantage of the special path opened to mark the 700th anniversary of the Swiss Confederation and which runs 35 kilometers around the southern shores of the lake. The original paddle steamer proved a great success, being joined in 1842 by a second boat, Saint-Gothard. Various steamboat companies were rapidly set up, merging in 1869 to form the SGV, which today is one of Switzerland's largest operators. 5 of the old paddle boats are still in first-class working order, running regular trips along the lake to delight the many visitors to the region, and in great demand for special outings and weddings. On the southeastern shore stands Tell's Chapel, a memorial to the famous Swiss folk hero William Tell. His legendary exploits during the 13th century helped unite the region's resistance against the hated Austrian overlords. The village of Bürglen claims the honor of being Tell's birthplace, and today it contains a museum celebrating his famous deeds, as well as a 16th century chapel built, according to ancient documents, on the site of his house. The nearby town of Altdorf was the chief settlement of the region for centuries, and where allegedly the Swiss hero shot the apple from his son's head. This famous deed is commemorated by an impressive bronze statue erected in 1895. After Fluelen, the line runs along the Reuss Valley through William Tell's homeland towards the high mountain peaks of the central Alpine Massif. We make swift progress along the flat delta of the River Reuss. The Grey Mouse has a potential top speed of 160 kilometers per hour, although this is never achieved during the Gotthard run. In its heyday, it operated the prestigious Cisalpine service between Milan and Paris, entering Switzerland through the Simplon Tunnel and passing along the Rhone Valley to exit at Vallaux. Top speeds were then possible during the French section of the route. We're now approaching Erstfeld at the end of the broad delta. The name refers to the location of the first field to the north of the Gotthard Pass. This region has been inhabited since early times, and a hoard of Celtic gold dating back to about 400 BC was found in the vicinity by workmen constructing avalanche protection. The depot at Erstfeld has been servicing the Gotthard Line since its opening in 1882 as the principal depot on the northern section of the route. The increased gradients from here necessitated the addition of a second locomotive for both steam and electric operation. For almost 40 years, steam ruled on the line, but owing to the acute coal shortages during the First World War, the Gotthard became one of the earliest main lines in Switzerland to convert to electric traction. Erstfeld was the home shed for many of these pioneering electric locomotives, one of the most famous being the CE68 Crocodile. Number 14270 has ended her active service and now proudly stands beside the depot out of which she worked for so long. The prototype CE68 is not the typical crocodile shape, having only a stumpy nose at either end. Built in 1918, it was given the nickname of Schlotterbeck, or shambling truck. During her service days, she was based at Biasca, although since 1982, she's been on display at the Transport Museum in Lucerne. About 50 crocodiles were purchased from SLM, with electrical equipment by MFO. Their nickname arising from the long articulated noses which each housed 2 motors and 3 coupled axles. They were designed to negotiate the tight curves of the Gotthard route without loss of speed, even while hauling a full load. On level ground, they were capable of maximum speeds of 65 km per hour, reducing to 30 km per hour on steeper gradients. During the 1940s, several of these were modified and redesignated as BE-68s. The last Croc was withdrawn from daily service in 1986, although number 14253 is still stabled at Erstfeld, making weekly outings to keep her working parts in good order. Although most have been broken up, several remain in preservation in both Switzerland and Germany. The Club del San Gottardo in Mendrisio, on the southern ramp of the Gothard, is currently restoring number 14276. As well as the crocodiles, 40 BE-46 locomotives were brought into service in the early 1920s for passenger use on the Gotthard Line. These were used to haul local stopping trains or as auxiliary locomotives when double heading was necessary. The longest locomotive ever to run over the Gothard was the AE-814, a giant of a machine, 34 meters in length. In its day, it was the most powerful locomotive in the world, at 7,000 horsepower and over 240 tons in weight. Two machines were brought into service in the early 1930s, purchased from SLM with electrical equipment by BBC. Number 11801 is kept in first-class running condition by the dedicated staff at Erstfeld. In the late 1940s, a new generation, bogie locomotives came into service on the line. The RE441 brought speeds above 110 km per hour to the Gothard. Today, these are used on local services along the flat sections of the line. The AE-66, built for general use on the Gothard, was the first SBB class to receive names and emblems. 25 machines sport chrome stripes along the sides and moustaches at either end. Its two bogies, each with 3 sets of wheels, were refined in the RE-66 series, whose 3 four-wheel bogies give superior running on the tight curves of the line. The Bobo arrangement and the 6 motors enable it to reach top speeds of 140 km per hour, over double the speeds achieved by the crocodiles in their heyday. It's currently the most powerful single locomotive in the world, at just over 10,500 horsepower. The most modern members of the SBB's fleet are the RE44460 class, which feature state-of-the-art computer-aided controls. At around 80 tons, these locomotives are only 2/3 of the weight of the RE66s, but their 4 commutatorless motors produce more than 8,000 horsepower. They have a top speed capability of 230 km per hour, far in excess of any other Swiss locomotive. While the RE460s normally sport a red livery, several locomotives are decorated by international firms, the most colourful being the advertisement for Märklin model railways. After Erstfeld, the flat plains end and the climb towards the Alpine barrier begins in earnest. Plans are underway to drive a base tunnel, approximately 50 kilometers long, deep under the mountain chain, linking Erstfeld with Biasca on the southern ramp. The siding, branching off to our right, services the preliminary excavations. We must gain 634 meters in height before reaching Gürschenen, and the ruling gradient now doubles from 1 in 77 to 1 in 38. The viaduct, towering high above the Castellenbruck at Armsteg, is the longest on the northern stretch of the Gotthard Line at 127 meters. The line passes under the pipes of the hydroelectric power station, which provides the energy for our train. The impressive viaduct over the Reuss takes our line from one side of the valley to the other. It's 77 meters high, the loftiest on the whole Gotthard line. The modern concrete structure replaced the earlier iron girder bridge. The Gotthard line is used heavily, with about 200 trains a day passing over the metals, rising to more than 250 at peak periods. The river at Gotthard looks peaceful today, but in August 1987, unusually heavy rainfall caused it to swell, bringing chaos to the village. The graveyard and priest's house were destroyed, and part of the railway embankment washed away. The Gotthard route was severed for almost a month, during which time bus services replaced trains while emergency work took place to rebuild the track. After Gotthard, the valley floor steepens, and even our present stiff gradient of 1 in 37 will be insufficient to surmount the climb. The line here has been artificially lengthened, initially with a spiral or helicoidal tunnel, followed by 2 loops up and down the valley before our train can continue southwards towards Goschenen. The gradient inside the 1,476-metre-long Pfaffernsprung tunnel has been eased to 1 in 43, allowing for wheel resistance on the tight curves. The spiral tunnel has raised our line by some 35 metres in height, allowing the grey mouse to anticipate the climb ahead. The RAB E-sets are multi-voltage units, driven by a centrally placed power car which has no less than 4 separate pantographs on its roof. This enables it to run on 4 different voltages: 15 kilovolts 16 2/3 cycles for Switzerland, Germany and Austria, 25 kilovolts 50 cycles for France, 3000 volts DC for Italy and 1500 volts DC for Belgium and Holland. This means our train can continue without interruption to its destination in Milan, switching to the Italian current at Chiasso. The track curves round and crosses the River Reuss. We catch a quick glimpse of Vasin Church on the hillside overlooking the track. The horseshoe Vattinger tunnel takes the track in a curve over 1,000 metres long, with the line rising 24 metres in height between the 2 tunnel portals. We are now running back down the valley in a northerly direction. Vasin Village lies at the junction of the Gotthard Pass with the Soestern Road from Meiringen and the Bernese Oberland, and has been the most important settlement in this section of the valley for many centuries. The church is a well-known landmark on the Gotthard Line, visible from all three levels of the track. Doubtless, grateful travellers would have paused here to say a prayer of thanks for a safe crossing achieved, or to ask a blessing for the way ahead. Built in 1735, the symmetry of the church's simple exterior of white walls and plain tiled roof is in sharp contrast to the ornate gilded altars within. They were the work of Jodoc Ritz, a famous church architect from the Upper Valais region of Switzerland. He's an ancestor of the world-famous founder of the Ritz hotel chain. The church is dedicated to St. Gallus, the Irish monk who founded the Abbey of St. Gallen in northeastern Switzerland. The churchyard's location gives unparalleled views of our train as it passes northwards down the valley and over the middle bridge across the Mayen-Reuss River. The original structure was replaced in the 1960s by one made of stone-clad concrete. The 1,090-metre-long Leggestein Loop tunnel takes our track back on itself to emerge on the top Mayen-Reuss Bridge. We've now gained the necessary height and can continue on our way south towards the Gotthard Tunnel. The middle level of track is visible below us, and we have another view of Vasen Church, now from the left-hand side of the train. What appears to be a tunnel mouth is actually an unusual bridge. The old iron girder structure over the Rohrbach was always vulnerable to the elements and was badly damaged by an avalanche in 1981. In order to avoid further problems, it was replaced by a pre-stressed concrete tube with a span of over 88 metres, constructed on site next to the original structure and slid sideways into position after completion. The Gotthard motorway alongside enters the 16.3-kilometre summit tunnel opened in 1980, the longest road tunnel in the world. Our train makes a final effort to reach Goschenen Station at 1,106 metres above sea level, the highest point on the north ramp of the Gotthard. While the Gottardo service continues through the tunnel towards Milan, we leave the railway to journey over the original route across the Gotthard Pass. Travellers to Andermatt have the chance of making the journey through the Schollennen Gorge with the efficient red trains of the Furka Oberalp Company, or of taking the winding Pass Road. A track was established here from early times, the route becoming possible following the bridging of the deep gorge. Legend tells that this had proved an impossible feat until the devil agreed to construct the bridge in return for the soul of the first living creature to cross. The wily folk of Uri agreed, making sure that the first pedestrian was a goat. In 1799, the bridge was the site of a major battle between Napoleon's troops and those of the Russian general Suvarov, resulting in defeat for the French. A handsome memorial 10 meters high, carved into the valley side, commemorates the event. The town of Andermatt lies in the broad Lucerne Valley, where the Gotthard Pass Road bisects the Furka and Oberalp routes. From 1842, a daily postcoach service was started, with relay stations at Andermatt, Hospental and Airolo. This operated during summer months until the advent of the railway. However, it's still possible to make the journey in the old-fashioned way, for during summer months a postcoach takes tourists on a leisurely ride from Andermatt to Airolo, passing through the village of Hospental, where the Gotthard route leaves the Lucerne Valley to make the climb to the summit. The Gotthard was a popular route for pilgrims visiting Rome, and like many of the other great Alpine passes, the route was under the protection of a saint, Saint Gotthard, an 11th century bishop from Hildesheim in Germany. This region is the watershed of no less than 4 major rivers, the Rhone, Rhine, Reuss and Ticino, and our way passes beside the young Gotthard-Reuss stream. The first crossing of the Gotthard by coach took place in July 1775, when an Englishman, Charles Greville, attempted to take his carriage along the mule track over the pass. When the way became too treacherous, the vehicle was dismantled and carried by porters. A cobbled road was gradually constructed, the whole route finally opening in 1830. Part of this still exists, giving an authentic touch to the coach journey. The summit of the road is at the Gotthard Hospice, over 2,000 meters above sea level. From medieval times, travelers could seek shelter here with the monastic custodians. In the early 19th century, the friars left the hospice and a hotel was built to accommodate travelers. The occupants of the coach can pause here to stretch their legs and enjoy a meal. One of the most impressive buildings at the summit is the old halting place, a solid square construction with an enormous roof. It was built in the 1830s as a combination of warehouse, customs shed, coach house and hotel. This has recently been restored and today houses a fascinating museum and restaurant. Meanwhile, the horses can enjoy a well-earned rest before continuing down the old road into the Ticino Valley. The Grey Mouse also has a downhill run as it passes along the south ramp of the Gotthard Line towards Italy. Whether you decide to travel northwards past the blue waters of Lake Lugano, along the lush valley of the Leventina, and through the impressive spirals of the Biaschina Gorge, or take a southbound train from central Switzerland along the impressive Reuss Valley towards the heart of the Alpine chain, the magnificent scenery along the Gotthard Line will make the journey truly memorable.